Welcome back. I know some of you are excited about this one because it's going to be an English roast dinner, and something that we've done, gosh, for decades now. It's very traditional and usually on a Sunday, but it consists of a good cut of beef and roast potatoes, a variety of vegetables, whatever really you like, but mainly root vegetables, sometimes with sauces, sometimes not. I'm just going to do plain old English roast today, and then the crowning glory, the Yorkshire pudding. Now, a lot of you watching have had Yorkshire puddings that I've made, principally at the core when we've been decorating for Christmas, where I've kind of produced 60 or 70, maybe even 80 or 90 Yorkshire puddings for us to enjoy. They vary depending on many things, depending on the way it's been done, but I'm going to give you a very simple recipe that even the novice cook or occasional cook should be able to master. There are several elements to it, but we'll talk about that later on. First of all, I've just taken this piece of beef. It's actually a chuck roast. Let me hold it up so you can see it. And I've washed it and got all the kind of surface blood off it ready. And in this frying pan, I'm going to sear it. The importance of that is, by searing it, you're sealing in all the flavour, you know, all the juices and all of that stuff. By the way, Emma told me I've got to smile occasionally, so here is a little bit of olive oil that's gone in there, and I'm going to have a few things in a minute. I've just set the oven at 175 Fahrenheit, and yeah, you're probably thinking, is that going to cook meat? Well, it does, but it's going to take at least 3 or 4 hours. And by doing that, even the toughest pieces of meat do break down and become a lot more tender. So here's my meat. I've put olive oil in the frying pan and cranking it up now on a low to medium heat. And the first thing I'm going to add, once the oil has started to sizzle, is some garlic. I always buy the minced garlic, but if you prefer to do fresh garlic and chop it up, squeeze it, whatever you do to it, that's up to you. So I'm smiling as I put this in. About a tablespoonful. Just adds to the flavour, and I'll be adding some more garlic in a few minutes. So while we wait for this, let me tell you about the Yorkshire pudding ingredients and how important it is to get them out early. I have over here my Yorkshire pudding ingredients. Now, you'll see this in the description, and Emma will probably pop it up on the side here, but the rule is 4-1-1. 4 eggs, 1 cup of flour, and 1 cup of milk. I always use 2%. And it always works out fine. And added to that just a dash of salt. That is really for taste, but it also does something to the batter as well. So I don't know if you can hear it, but the garlic's starting to sizzle. I like to season the meat. Mrs. Dash we use a lot as a salt substitute. And then this is another Mrs. Dash, which is garlic and herb. If it's too much garlic for you, you don't like it, don't put it in. So here we go. Everybody ready for the sizzle? You just place it onto the pan, medium heat again, otherwise the garlic will burn. And what you're doing is searing the meat. So again, you're sealing it so that none of the goodness inside there is going to leak during the roasting. And so I leave it probably 3 or 4 minutes per side. By scooting it around, it's also absorbing the garlic inside there. And remember, the seasoning is on the downside, so I seasoned it and put it face down. to make sure that all that got sealed in, because that really does add to the flavour of the meat. So before I change it, and if you're timing me, I know that's not 3 or 4 minutes or whatever I said, you just kind of rule of thumb. You know approximately when you feel you should change it over. I'm seasoning the top, what we're calling the top, and I'm flipping it over now. Hey, see? The garlic hasn't burned, it's just started to kind of change colour, and the olive oil I put in there is still in the pan, although a lot of it has been used to seal the meat. So now I'm going to put it on its side. And this being a chuck roast, there was a small amount of fat on there, which is fine. That helps with flavouring again. And as you can see with the close-up, that nearly all the garlic has gone now. And as soon as this is done, I top it up like that on the real hot part of the pan, so that that bottom piece is sealed. Once that's done, it only takes a few seconds really for a smaller area, then I shall flip it over and do the other end. Doing the final side, and you notice how it's really sealed up nicely. You don't want it to burn, or you don't want it to go too brown, because once it's in the oven, it's going to brown even more, albeit at a low temperature. So here's the roasting pan, and in it I've put about ½ an inch of cold water from the faucet. I'm turning the heat off the pan now, this pan, and it should be done. Check. Yes. Done very well. So now it goes into the pan, and I will just scrape whatever was left on there. Now the reason for putting water in here is that then becomes part of the gravy making, because it will absorb some of the juices that will come out, and that will help a great deal. Just got a little bit more garlic on the top. Spread it around. Okay, it's now going to go in the oven, again 175. But before I do that, just to remind you about the ingredients for the Yorkshire puddings. If you're wondering why they've come out so early, because this is going to take 4 hours to cook, then eggs and milk should be at room temperature. If they come straight out the fridge, sometimes the eggs, don't perform the way that they should. So I guess it's like baking really. If you get your eggs out early, it helps. So all that is over there and ready. I do have a very fancy thermometer for meat that Heather gave me for Christmas a few years ago. It's excellent because it's kind of remote. So you switch it on the main unit, and you can take this with you. So if you want to be in another room, or upstairs, or in the yard, or whatever, it's telling you what the temperature is, and you can program it in. I'm programming it roast beef 170 degrees. That's the internal temperature. That will be just kind of pinky inside and not too raw. And we're back. My lovely kitchen assistant, Miss Heather, prepared the vegetables for us today. And what we have is, well, first of all, we have a pan of potatoes here, and I usually work half a potato if it's regular size, or a quarter, and we usually work on 4 pieces per person, and they're ready to go to be part boiled. So I'll turn them on in a moment, and once they start to boil, I'll leave them about a minute or two, turn it off, drain the water, and then put it in the pan for roasting, which I will show you a bit later on. The vegetables here, we have cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, a big favourite in England, and what we usually do is trim the bottom off and then just cut the stalk so it's actually got some chance of cooking through well. Carrots and a parsnip. Now I'm going to roast the vegetables today, so they're all going to go in a pan. I'll show you in a minute. And then an onion, just lightly onion with the taste of that. I will roast that separately, probably. Not fully decided yet. So this is what I do. This is for the potatoes. Shortening. Put a dollop of shortening in here and then put them in the oven, and the temperature will come up. It's actually 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And as soon as these are part boiled, drain off all the water, put them into the sizzling fat, and then put them in on the lower shelf at 400. With the vegetables, a flatter tray, olive oil. Don't part boil the vegetables, put them straight on there, and then just drizzle a little bit more oil and seasoning, and then that goes in the same oven with the potatoes. And you're looking at an hour for the roast potatoes. You can take the vegetables out probably after 35-40 minutes and put them on a lower heat so they don't burn. Or you can put them in later, whichever you want to do. It's a bit of a juggling act. I've been doing this for so long that it just comes second nature. So it's when I'm thinking this through with you, making sure that the instructions are there, but they'll be all there on the description. Now, this early on, a couple of hours before we actually eat, we are going to start the Yorkshire puddings. Now, remember what I said earlier? These eggs have been out for at least 2 hours, so I'm going to crack them into a mixing bowl. Big shout out here for Major Ronnie Robbins, who loves Yorkshire pudding. So there are the 4 eggs. Next, I'm going to put in the flour. Some people sieve the flour in there. Quite honestly, I don't think it makes any difference. It's all to do with air anyway. And then a cup of milk. So remember, it's 4 eggs, 1 cup of flour, 1 cup of milk. I just added a little bit of water, less than, well, it's probably 2 teaspoons, just to give it some other liquid in there. Now, Tristan gave me this for Christmas a few years ago, Oxo hand mixer, ideal for Yorkshire, because you don't want to overdo it. So nice gently to get all the ingredients mixed. Once they are pretty well mixed, then you can speed it up a little bit. But the idea is that you're getting air in and you're making bubbles. Yeah, you could use an electric mixer if you want to. I just find that this works pretty well. Very important that all the ingredients get mixed because they're carefully measured. So if you find lumps of flour at the bottom of the jug, it's going to be telling on the Yorkshire. I'll go back and do this probably 3 or 4 times before I cook them. I'll put them over here, out of the way, and let them stand in room temperature. So there we have it. Potatoes parboiled, put them in a pan with some shortening, oven at 400 for 1 hour, and then the vegetables, it takes about 40 minutes to cook the vegetables. So either put them in with the potatoes and then put them in a lower oven, or just delay that a little bit. And you can season the vegetables however you want, but we do like them roasted with some seasoning. Catch up with you in a while. The potatoes are part boiled. They've been up to boil for probably about 5 minutes, which is more than enough. So I'm turning those off now, and what I'm going to do is drain them in a colander. I need to make sure that all the moisture is out of them because I'm about to get the pan out of the oven, which the shortening has now melted and it should be ready to go. So I'm putting them into the fat. It's a healthy sign when they sizzle, and some salt on them, and then just turn them over so that they get completely immersed in the shortening. Remember, it's shortening that we're using here. Another dash of salt, just to be sure. And then these are going back in here. Bottom shelf, 400 degrees. Moving back to here now, vegetables preparation. I've got cauliflower, and I added some asparagus because it's in season, with Brussels, carrots, the parsnip, all in there. That looks a big load. So what I do here is just give it a little bit of olive oil, and then my trusty Mrs. Dash garlic and herb seasonings, and then they've all got to be stirred up so they all get evenly coated. My vegetable pan, it's got some olive oil in it. I'm now going to put in the vegetables and just slosh them around a little bit to get evenly coated. Good. Put some Italian seasoning and some garlic powder. Just a dash. And then a little bit of butter on the top. Always helps, gives it flavour, just here and there. It's actually blue bonnet, not real bonnet, but it's does fine for what we want. Okay, this is ready to go in. It's going in with the potatoes at 400 degrees, and it's going to go on the top shelf. I'll explain what's happening here. Potatoes and vegetables, they're going to cook pretty quickly, and we've also got to do our Yorkshire puddings in there, so eventually that is going to go down in this oven, which still has the meat, and the meat has been cooking now for 4 hours. It's nearly ready, and so I'll transfer anything that will burn down there just to stay cooking. Welcome back. This gets now the tricky bit, having to juggle all these different elements, and my producer has already said to me, don't forget people don't have 2 ovens. The answer to that, if you only have 1 oven, is to cook the meat ahead of time, so then you can raise the temperature to do your potatoes. So as long as your beef is done at least an hour before the meal is due, then that will work. Okay, now before we start the gravy off, here are the Yorkshire tins. Let me just explain what they are. These are Yorkshire pudding tins, made and purchased in Yorkshire, England. That's a county, 2/3 of the way up the country, and if you're a Downton Abbey fan, then that's the county where Downton Abbey is supposed to be based on. So they're very shallow, they're very wide, as you can see, which should be showing this camera really, because what you want is width so that the heat then will raise. So a muffin pan would work, but Michael's does a pan like this, only larger, but almost the same width. So you could try that, or I guess you can go to Yorkshire and buy them. But just a squirt of olive oil. The traditional way is beef fat. We don't have any of that. But a squirt of olive oil will work, just a little bit in the bottom. Now I have to tell you that these pans are already greased. We don't wash them, we wipe them. A little bit like a cast iron skillet, so that they always stay greased so nothing sticks, at least we hope. So these are going to go in over there when it's at 500 degrees. So that's why we're saying everything needs to be cooked ahead of time, certainly the meat. Your potatoes can take 500 for a few minutes, which is all you need. But the reason for the 500 is to get this really, really hot, so that when the liquid goes in, the batter goes in, it reacts and starts the rising. Once that's happened, after about 5 minutes, you reduce it to 425. A little bit explained. So it's 500 initially to get this fat hot. You pour the batter in, which I'll show you, and then after 5-6 minutes, reduce it down to 425 to cook. So your potatoes can stand that, as long as they're not already pretty browned. If they are, take them out and put them back in. Your vegetables and anything else you're doing, best to keep in that second oven or cook them ahead of time. So it all makes sense? Hopefully it does. Okay, while we're waiting for the oven to get up to 500, I'm going to start the gravy. This is the meat juice. Remember the 1/2 inch of water in the bottom of the roasting pan? This is the meat juice, and this is actually a fat saver. Fortunately, there isn't any, well, very little. So this is good stock, it's beef stock ready for the gravy. And I'm going to pour that in this sauce pan, and it's all gone in. And then my secret ingredient, well, there's two. Here's the first one, brown gravy mix. We buy it at Sam's, and I just eyeball it as to how much I need. A gravy or a sauce whisk goes nicely in the bottom. Oops, if you've got the gas on. Goes nicely in the bottom so that you can then gently whisk this so all the powder gets into the liquid and you don't get any lumps, which you shouldn't. Here's my other secret ingredient. It's an English product called an Oxo Cube. That's where the Oxo brand comes from for kitchen utensils. And this is a bit like beef bouillon, only a little more dense. And I usually crumble 2 of these in. Now Publix sell them. If you live here in Atlanta area, then the farmers market, Buford Highway, just above the International Core, sell them. I put 2 of these in. It just gives a real depth of flavour to the gravy. But if you don't have these, it's not the end of the world, because this product is excellent. But this just gives it that kind of meatier taste. It helps to thicken it as well, which is another good thing. And then last but not least, Worcestershire Sauce. Ian Perrins is the brand, that's where it was invented, but I kind of wonder about Ian Perrins' name, if it's still the original recipe. But anyway, this is good old Aldi. And for this amount of gravy, I put in about 6 or 8 splodges. Again, it just gives it a good flavour, a good tang. And then we'll just let this boil now. Once it's boiled, reduce heat, let it simmer. It will form a bit of a skin on the top, and if you don't like that, you can take it off. We're almost there, 485. Potatoes are pretty browned in there now, so they should be okay for the 500 degrees. The other pan is roasted onion, and that was just a little bit of olive oil on a piece of foil in a pan, and I will transfer that down to here, which is where my vegetables are. So we'll wait for that to get up to scratch, and then I will put the batter in. Okay, this is one last whisk. That's ready to go. Before I do start on it, the onions are coming out and they're going in this lower oven. Otherwise they will burn. Give those potatoes a shake. And I think we're ready. On hand. Okay, so you want to keep your temperature at 500, work as quickly as you can. I usually pull the tray out and you can hear it sizzling and smoking, because 500 degrees is probably the max this oven does. Alright, it gently goes back in, and I'm going to keep it at 500. I'll put the oven light on so we can see, for about 5 minutes. So it's 5:49 now. At about 5:55 I will drop the temperature to 425 for another 15. So Yorkshires take about 20 minutes to cook total, maybe a little shorter, but you can see already that they're starting to form. And as soon as they start to rise, that's when you reduce the temperature, otherwise they will burn. You don't want them too crunchy either. So there you have it. Everything's ready. I just need people to come and eat it now, which I don't think will be an issue. But we have roast beef and Yorkshire puddings in the middle, roast vegetables, roast potatoes, roast onions, and our gravy. So thanks for watching, and hope you try this sometime.